Jamie, thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, thank you, everybody, for being here. Appreciate it as always. A dedicated group, I'm saying. So the first thing then is to approve the August and September meeting minutes. I sent those out to the agenda, so thank you again, Rachel, for being so dedicated to get those done for us. Anybody have any questions about the meeting minutes or changes, or anybody want to give me a motion to approve the minutes for August and September? Approve August and September. Thank you. Second, Karina seconds. Thank you very much. All right, so we've got a lot to talk about actually, but you know, I always like to start on that and that time, so I'll probably talk fast, so just interrupt me. Okay, all right, good. All right, so the first thing then is always our awesome report from Counselor Parker. Counselor Parker.
Well, it's been a boring couple of weeks here at City Hall, just doing the mechanics of running a city.
Oh,
Our Public Works Department is thrilled this week that they took receipt of a new truck that they needed. They have had authorization for the last 16 months to buy this truck and have not been able to find the truck. And what's making it even worse in the supply chain is the government purchasing guidelines, which for 100 years have worked out pretty good. You go get a bid, you take it in, you have 2 readings of the city council, and then the city manager signs off. Car dealerships have people walking in with a wad of cash. And so cars and trucks sellers don't really have much interest in working with government, because by the time we get around to handing a check, they could sell it for something more. So they're being creative and even looking on the secondary market first time. I've ever seen government work on the secondary market and going through car ads and stuff. So anyway, there's that. Just got off the phone with Jerry Nelzine, our public works director, and he was almost teary-eyed talking about how good his parks crew feels about the work. He said every bit of work that you do just makes it easier on them. And they have this really strong pride about that cemetery.
well, you can tell.
They really take good care of it. So that was that big thing. Then finally, on Saturday, I was doing my what my children call my Uncle Weekly, where I go around and pop into stores and ask people how things are going. And I ran into a couple who were visiting from out of town. And we were walking down the street and they said, well, what's that building? And I said, well, that's the 1935 City Hall built by Roosevelt with project administration to workmen who were unemployed during the Great Depression. I said, you guys should have a sign here. So I bet if you guys had some text, we can find you some money to do that. I know we did the project before with Wade Park and a couple of other places. One in particular, I'd love to see a sign for, because not a lot of people know about it. I mentioned it here before the committee about the tower next door and how that represented a brief moment in firefighting history when hoses were made out of canvas. And they had pulleys after a fire run to pull them up and let them dry. That's why that big tower's there. It's not for civil defense or attacks from the rocket or anything like that. It's to dry out canvas. So anyway, that's my report, Madam Chair. I'm afraid I don't have more.
Great, thank you very much. Actually,
that task.
Mary Hanlon and Carol and I have the sign covered, so Mary's covering the cost.
All right.
Yeah, it would be awesome. So that's good. And I haven't heard lately when her open house is going to be.
October 11th.
October 11th.
The date
Thank
I
you,
heard,
Jamie.
yes.
Haven't seen anything recently about that. Funny because I just got an email from Mary Hamlin today. Yeah, Mary Hanlon is paying for it. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Okay, so then I'll just recap briefly what's going on with the planning commission. So we had an application for the Canby Center, you know, what people might call a food bank, but much more than the food bank. The Canby Center is building a massive addition, 11,000 square feet, I think it is. Might not get that right. And it's gorgeous. You see, you know, all the drawings and everything, but it's gonna really enable them to serve that many more people. I mean, if you've ever been in there, it's crowded. I mean, there is no space in there. You know, they just store more food and have freezers and more walk-in coolers and classrooms, and there's a lot of assembly work that goes on in there, and it's really hard sometimes to find the space when you have a long line of things to be assembled, whether it's backpacks or whatever it is. So anyway, so that was approved. I'm not quite sure how you know, the process will be, what the process is, but so at that site, they'll stay at the same site right next to the high school, but they'll have a beautiful building that's more fit for purpose than what they've had in a long time. So they're very excited about that, and everybody's excited for them. So they're awesome to work with. I don't know. There's probably permitting and things that need to happen. It's funny, sometimes when we approve something, it starts right away, and other times not so much. So I don't know why that is, but it's approved. So yeah, so that would be really exciting. So Amazon, you may have heard as just citizens that Amazon has been considering a spot here for a large, I don't remember how many square feet, Jamie, I'm sure you know this.
About 500,000.
500,000 square feet, but they've pulled out. So they've changed their minds, which is their prerogative, and as their business ebbs and flows, they make, you know, they make their decisions on, you know, along with that. So that's off the shelf now. So anybody that's been worried about Amazon being kind of catty cornered across from the cemetery, actually out that way. So that's not going to happen. So any more news on that?
Well, it's paused is
Paused.
the word that was shared with me. And
Okay.
so it could be that it comes back.
Mhm.
It could be that they do some, you know, go different direction, but it's paused. And as far as like the land use process goes, I believe that they have like a year's time that pauses kind of where they were at.
Right.
So yeah, I don't have any more than that.
Okay.
What could they do?
Amazon could still go there. It's just that the development as of right now is paused. And so they have the entitlement still to that property and purchase the property.
Yeah, Buzz Wygant's check went through, so he gets to pay the bills next month. And I've asked the city administrator if they would go to Amazon and ask them if they'd like to donate that land for ball fields, so. Sounds like a Don Quixote idea, but
Well.
if you're not afraid of no, why not ask, so.
Good. Keep tilting at those windmills. You never know. Okay, then I just mentioned or noted the housing needs analysis. So there's a subcommittee of, well, it's a committee looking at developing a 20-year plan to meet the needs of growth for the city, growth for housing, growth for land. And then there's a second committee that's looking at the economic growth piece of it. And we had another meeting with consultants. So last week, I think last week. And they're continuing on with they have a lot of great analysis done, and they work not just with our state, but other states that have a similar scenario where the state has passed a law that we have to meet growth requirements based on population. Now, how we go about that is there are a lot of opportunities. So I think the work going forward is going to be really interesting, and you'll see and hear a lot more as citizens, a lot more opportunities to get involved. If there's a survey, please take it. If you can attend the meetings, please do, because they're looking for a ton of feedback on not so much, you know, do we grow or not, because we don't really have a choice. In fact, we don't have a choice, but how do we do that? Up, out, you know, where, here, there, whatever. So there are many, many options out there, but I've been super impressed with the consultants. My goodness, you can tell they've done this numerous times, and they know every city has a choice about how they do it. So if you look around, like McMinnville's taken one approach, or Newburgh's taken another, and now Coos Bay is going through a similar process. So this is where, to me, the rubber really hits the road. We know what we need to do. We know what options are. We know how much land we have. We know how many people we have. And so we know how much needs to grow in the next 20 years. Now the race is on. Yeah. Yeah.
And sorry, no. Okay, I was just gonna say that that some of this work with the housing needs analysis, and then there's also an economic opportunity analysis that's going on at the same time. Both of those projects will inform the comp plan, and the transportation system plan, which both of those are gonna be updated next. But at the October 19th city council meeting, a planning commission and city council joint work session will be held. And so if you're interested, you can either, come and listen, sign into Zoom, watch the video afterwards. And so it should be some really, I think, good information. The consultants will be there, and it will just help to kind of bring together the work that's being done in these groups and with the outreach that they've done, and start to discuss with the decision makers themselves.
Excellent, thank you.
As history buffs, I think it's interesting for us to think about the fact that out on Hawley and Territorial, the Montecouco properties that currently are being developed, and even more further will be developed almost all the way up to the river. Those decisions were made through this process 35 years ago. Whether that was going to be urbanized, whether houses could be built, and now that the legislature 8 years ago took away your ability to vote on annexations. If it's in the urban growth boundary, it can be annexed. So the process that you're talking about is where this line is going to be drawn for the next 20 to 30 years. What farmland, yes, what farmland will be included in buildable lands. And the next 4 years will decide how Canby looks for the next 20 to 40 years. And most people, that's barely on their radar. Are we going to build a dog park or not? That's the question of the day.
Well, with this, the growth down.
It's like a rubber band. How far out are we going to push it? Because right now there's a rubber band around certain lands. And then we have to go back and stretch that out based upon the expected growth. What we get to do is say where that happens. And if my city councilors think the last couple of years have been hard, wait until farmers start beating on their heads to say that rubber band isn't quite far enough out. It doesn't include my farm. So there's going to be a lot of praying in the next 4 years, I think.
One good thing too about the work that this group has done with all the reconnaissance level survey and the intensive surveys is we know what we have. We know if there's something super important. So if something gets pushed or an area gets rezoned, or the state effectively rezones things by saying, well, you had an R2, but now you can do this on it. And that's almost to me like rezoning, but it isn't technically. But if so, something's going to get torn down, or maybe another Dahlia building comes in or something like that. So at least we'll know if there's, the possibility of things being demolished. Are they things that matter? Are they things that are going to be a real big problem if they just cease to exist? So we didn't have that before. So we have all that now with all the survey data information, and also very fortunate that the planning commission is kind of tied at the hip with us now. They really, I don't know if I've shared some of the stories, but they totally understand, and they've had enough exposure with Carol and with me, and they understand what we have and the information that we always want to be sharing together. So I don't know if I told you this story, but the other night we were talking about parking in downtown, and one of the commissioners said, well, the city just needs to buy an old house and tear it down. And he went, sorry, Judy. Did I tell you that story? I don't know. Anyway, so we've inserted the chip.
So has the planning commission referenced the preservation plan then? I mean, that whole section of the preservation plan?
Not yet, but it will happen.
About agricultural preservation?
Yeah,
Okay.
it will happen. They're just not that far along yet. I know, frustrating. It's interesting because I can understand there's some on, outside the growth boundary that don't even come my way. And I feel that way too, but I'm so far out, it's not going to happen in my lifetime. But others are like the 4th generation farmers, and they're like, give me the money, man, give me the money. I'm so done with farming. So it's hard. It's all over the map. It's interesting. So anyway. Get involved if you can.
Yeah, it's
Let
super
your voice be
interesting.
heard.
Well,
I think it does matter.
I mean, we can't vote on it, especially those of us that are outside.
Well,
Never gonna get. brought in.
Yeah, but I think for people that are outside the growth boundary, it's even more important to be heard at the meetings or in surveys and things so that they have a sense, you know, I mean, they know, the consultants know, but so everybody knows that, you know, that there's a whole different piece of Canby that makes Canby, right? And that needs to be seriously considered, otherwise it just won't be Canby anymore.
So for example, if you own 100 acres that could be brought into growth boundary, but you don't plan on ever selling it to developers, is it worth even bringing it into the growth boundary? I mean, if it's a
Yes.
dead land, like,
Yes, because if you want to use it as collateral, the difference
Maybe
between
land
it being
swaps.
in and out is about 20-fold difference. Its worth is recognized by lenders as being worth, the land is worth more. It's developed.
right, but if you're never planning on selling it or developing it, what good does it do to bring it in as
Nothing.
potential land when
Not a thing.
the next time this comes around, they're gonna push it to somebody else's to try to get the acreage? Because that's my question.
And what I am told is when the urban growth boundary was built, there was not a farm that was put in that didn't have the approval from the landlord.
Oh, I remember.
And you know, also with annexations, you know, the annexation has to be property owner led. So for instance, if we expanded the urban growth boundary, and let's say it did, you know, incorporate your place, for example. If you did not want to annex into the city, even if neighbors were, then you would not have to annex. It's not forced. So you can be in the urban growth boundary, but not in the city limits.
Yeah, we don't have forced
I mean,
annexation.
yeah. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
That's different than the last time we had to go around, I think, on this, according to what the top was, so. Whenever we did this last time.
So-
We did this dance, so.
Well, that's what it is now, and I'm happy to get more information on that.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
I know how it works.
The other thing is McMinnville did some kind of land swapping, and I don't know all the details, but somehow they were able to say, well, we're gonna take another area outside that wants to give it up and leave that area. You know what I'm saying? They kind of were able to do, they called it land swapped. I don't know exactly all the details, but
Yeah, if our study comes back and says we need 1,000 acres. In order for us to meet the law, it doesn't matter where we stretch that road at, it just has to be 1,000 acres.
people.
And there are rare cases, what they're called donut annexations, where the area is completely surrounded by an urbanized area, but that's the only exception. That usually the only find that type of fault.
And my parents farmed the one over on Baker Road and Metro has not acquired, and they never will.
Okay.
That's the reason.
Yeah.
Trust them to do all of that.
Do you live outside the, growth boundary
I
line?
do. I live on the edge. I look across the field to Columbia Street.
Oh,
So I'm on the other side of Malino Road, one thing over, so.
so if the boundary is changed, will you be in boundary?
That's the question.
Oh,
It was in and it got taken out in 2013. I believe that was the year, I can't remember. And then the last go around, they wanted to add it in and we fought to not have it in and they took it out and went a different way. And so, yeah. Our whole area over there, it's ready to go. I mean, in not the way they probably want us to go, but they're mobilizing.
Yeah, see,
So-
we don't want to annex,
Yeah.
we don't want to put anything in the urban growth boundary that doesn't want to.
Yeah, the only people that want to are people that have like a postage stamp lot, which really doesn't do any good.
Right.
Yeah, from what my understanding is, you need like 50-acre parcels. For the industrial park. Well, I think I read that. In the fine details, where there's a shortage of large parcels. Right now, so. Okay, that's not.
No, that's all right. Thank you. Good conversation. Just suggesting anyone if you
Just
see
interesting.
anything, it is.
Tomorrow's history.
Tomorrow's, yeah, exactly. Okay, so some important dates coming up. So, as Jamie mentioned, the City Hall open house is October 11th. And, the historic city hall open house,
That's the, that's
Uh-huh.
Tuesday.
October.
Great place to celebrate.
Or just pass it.
We haven't already.
I haven't considered it yet, but
Okay, it was on my radar.
But it's fine.
And then the arch ribbon cutting ceremony is the first Thursday in November,
Yes,
November
third.
4th. So that's third. Sorry.
So how do I go about getting the?
So we're gonna use the other one.
Okay.
And there's still an option for, the city hall includes the sesquicentennial tree. And that's where Kathy Ray Smith wanted the time capsule. I don't know, maybe she's talked to Jamie about that, but anyway, I'm just kind of out of that conversation, but the tree will not be planted till spring now.
Okay.
So, okay, sometime next
Is that
year.
date set in stone now, November 3rd?
Yes.
Okay. I'll tell the boys tomorrow.
Great, that's perfect.
Because I should explain that. So the reason they want to wait with the tree.
Yeah, we were kind of in limbo wondering what in the world was going on. I'll let them know.
They're gonna plant the sesquicentennial tree, this, I think I the worst, in the springtime. The,
Was gonna be the posted.
behind the historic city hall.
Okay.
Between the city hall and Wayward Sandwiches is where it's gonna go, and that's gonna be a plaza. That's going to be beautiful courtyard, but the design of the courtyard isn't fully finalized, so that's what I got from Mary Hanlon today, was just to say they're not ready. To plant because they don't have the finalization of the plans for the courtyards. Yeah. It's gonna be pretty, though. I've seen images of it. Anything else about important dates that I'm missing?
I have one.
Oh, yeah.
The Willamette Falls Heritage and Landings Area Coalition is doing their 50th, no, the celebration recognizing businesses 50 years and greater on October 12th, also at Hubsports. And I think that we have a flyer on that I can send out to you guys.
50 years and what?
50 years and older, and it for
Businesses.
businesses 50 years and older in the area. And it's not just Canby, it's within the Willamette Falls Heritage and Landings Area Coalition boundaries.
So there's gonna be they want,
I think they're gonna have or not, I think they're gonna have a celebration on Tuesday, October 11th. And I have an invitation that I can send out to everybody.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. So you get an email. Okay, so that's it for that. So project updates, the work to get the depot building on the registration of historic places, the local registry. So Carol's working on that, has been for quite some time. Thank goodness for that. And she has submitted the application, so that's with the planning department. And it's a little bit easier than some because this is a privately owned building instead of a city-owned building. And so the museum staff, you know, the board actually are the ones that are gonna do a lot of the work. So there'll have to be a notice period, so you know how it has to go out to any property owner within, I think it's 500 feet of the building, and I'm not quite sure when that's gonna happen, fairly soon, but everybody's got what they need, and the planning staff and everyone else is starting to work on it, so it's hard to say exactly when that'll be done, but then we'll have a hearing, and we'll have to have another public hearing like we did with the historic city hall. So my guess is I would say December, January, maybe. We'll see how these things go. But anyway, that's being worked on full force.
Would you, for that hearing, will that be part of a regular Heritage and Landmark Commission meeting, or would you guys want it to be a separate?
Typically, what we've done in the past is we have our meeting, and sometimes we keep it to a half an hour, and then right after
Okay.
we have the other. So we're all together anyway. That seems to work out pretty well.
Perfect.
And I excuse myself since the council was the appeals court to any decision.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
right.
Not that that's ever been necessary, but
I need to ask Carol though. Carol and I did a presentation for the Rotary on Friday, and that was fun. And Carol talked about the depot and all the work that she did and how she went about the research. When she gave that to me, I could not believe it. I mean, I know she's been really busy and you know, that kind of research. You pick up every rock and you look under it, and you compare and contrast and who's heard this and what's really real. And so her presentation, I'm gonna ask her, she'll come and give it to this group because I think it'd be really interesting
That'd
to
be
see.
fun.
Yeah, so I'm gonna see if she's available for our November 7th meeting. And I want to ask her. So if she's available, she'll come. It's really good. It's fun to see the pictures of it moving down the street when they moved it. Oh my gosh, the pictures are just
No, our
wild.
kids got out of school that day.
Yeah, I said there were little kids on bikes everywhere. I said, wow, those kids all in front of this thing.
Right,
Yeah.
the city holiday,
Oh, really?
just about, yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I noticed the last time I was in the depot. The floor in the main area was replaced. That was all tongue and groove.
Yeah.
I know, because I worked on
I
that.
know. It's great. Yeah. There was a big, I'm not gonna say argument, but it got controversial about when it was moved, did it come down 3rd Street or 4th Street? I think they did come to the conclusion, but it wasn't evident from the pictures.
Well, I mean, it was sitting right over there.
Yeah, but
You couldn't move it anywhere, so. Right.
3rd Street or 4th
Yeah,
Street
that's right. Yeah, they had to turn.
by the, yeah, so I don't know. I'm not. I don't.
No, I don't think they moved it past, I don't think it went past the west parking lot.
And I just wanted to say, I was at the Rotary presentation and Judy and Carol and Nora Clark also presented and they did an amazing job.
It was
And
fun.
so it's, you guys, I mean, you care so much about the work that you do and it really comes through in the presentation. And even though I've seen some of it or bits and pieces or no bits and pieces, it's really fun to see, especially you three kind of come together and present on that. So well
That was
done to
fun.
you as always.
No, thank you. Yeah, it was a good engaged audience and they laughed at our jokes.
That's the most important key.
Yeah, they're all in a room and there's a bunch of them, so it's not like you're inviting them, they're not gonna come, they're already there, so they're a captive audience and they laugh at your jokes, yeah. Okay, Zion Memorial Cemetery, so, excellent activity this year. I thought it was great fun and hard work, of course, but we had really great people. We had 10 new volunteers this year, amazing. That's always good to bring in new folks and sometimes they come back and sometimes they don't, but we had people from Malala, people from Aurora and people from Canby. I was asked this week, I think, to give the Canby Herald a listing of all our stats and how many people were there and how much did we clean and pictures, and thank you for the pictures. Thank you, Ron, for the pictures. And so the newspaper has everything they'd ever want to know. So we'll see if they do something with it or not. Usually they do. But they made it a point to ask me to please gather all that information and give that to them about how many we've cleaned to date. 559, I think that's the number. Anyway, and how many people were there. And it was really great. So I really appreciate everybody had their normal role of scrubbing and cleaning, but everybody had a unique thing that they did that contributed. So like you were kind of helped me get set up, which is always good, and help with the setup. So Rachel, your 2 sons were awesome to help with that too, getting things out of the truck and getting the hoses hooked up, which is always interesting, and getting people trained and in the right place, and lots of history stories. There was one person out there, I don't know if you all saw him, but he had Ancestry on his phone. And so when he would uncover a name, he would look at it. And if anybody was in earshot, he would say, hey, look at this guy or who's this person. It was pretty cool. It was, it was an interesting history lesson. And you were great at moving the hoses around, mister. So thank you for that. Yeah. It's important.
You said there was 559 more done,
Yeah, 559
and how many years?
4 years.
4 years?
No, 5 years, 5 years. It's a little over 100 barely every year. This year we did 97, which is a little lower than normal, but man, I don't know if you guys noticed some of those. Yeah, they were hard and big. Somehow that section was impacted by, I think, the trees and just the age and the size, and obviously they've never been touched because they took, oh,
There were some year before last. Like that.
Yeah,
I don't know if we
yeah.
should have some closer to the road. Anytime there's a tree nearby,
Mhm.
they really get.
yeah, it was very rewarding to see what they looked like after they were done, and I'm sure even more so now. thank you, Councilor Parker, for being out there. So you're always great to support us. We appreciate it. So.
We had another meeting that day, so I'm sorry it was just touch and go,
That's
but
okay.
still,
You know.
and around and thanked everybody for being there. And I was impressed by some of the new people who had showed up. That's always shows to me, an effort in its ascendancy. When you get people who had no connection, but they just heard it, and this sounds like a fun thing to do.
Yeah, yeah, and there were families
Yeah,
and, I don't know, friends and, yeah, it was interesting and,
That couple that I was there with, that I trained on.
Yeah.
First, they would take care of some of their relatives.
On the other
On the
side.
other side of
Yeah.
the cemetery, so that's why they had the connection. And they,
it's true.
it was kind of neat, actually.
I got an email after the fact from a couple that live on. Road do they live on? Near the cemetery, but they lived there 50 years and they said, we couldn't come, but put me down, we'll be there next year. So, that was nice to me. I probably should forward it to you. You probably know them.
Probably.
You probably been to their house.
It's your mom.
Yeah, exactly. You shared it
Well,
with
that's
them.
all right. She's volunteering me already.
Remind me next, and I'll get somebody out there and videotape it. You know, the coin of the realm these days, is Instagram, Twitter, and some of these others. But to be able to put together a 20-second piece, sitting down, talking to someone who's scraping this up, this with the guy, Bruce Parker. It just
Yeah,
was,
he was
it
interesting.
was like a Zen exercise for him. He said, this is so peaceful to do.
That's really good.
I was putting away the last hose and he goes, oh, I gotta be done, I gotta be done. I'm leaving now. Anyway, so go ahead.
I noticed that, some of the people scrape the
Cement,
yeah, the cement, the foundation. And some people didn't. And I think that when they don't, when the rain hits it,
I talked to Jeff Hiltz about that last year because, the base of the headstone is usually made of granite or marble or something like that, but the base often is cement. And oftentimes those were set by family members. This was long before the city owned it. The families would just stick them in there, because Jeff Hiltz had said some of those are in there really deep and some of them aren't. But Jeff said, specifically, we were out at the Mark Prairie Cemetery, the little family plot, and they have a big problem with their things set in concrete, but he said he doesn't touch it. And I asked him that question and he said, it doesn't really affect the stone. And he said the reason he doesn't touch it, especially the ones that have all that moss on them and, that are really caked with that green, moss. And he said, if you try to scrub it, it can deteriorate to the cement. And that's what's happened at Mark's school because the family kept scrubbing it, because they thought, and so their cement, anyway, it's a big problem. But he said it doesn't matter if people lightly scrub it or if you can get it off and just kind of pops off. But he said the better thing to do is spray that 60-second cleaner on it and call it good. So maybe we'll do that sometime. Get a bottle of 60-second. Yeah.
Metal,
Yeah.
like those folks have metal scrapers. And I said, you're using plastic ones because if it pops off, it pops off. If not,
Right. And that's pretty much. So it was a good question.
Yeah.
We asked about it at Mark Prairie School because they have a big problem with that. So leave it alone, put some spray on it. So anyway, we did this last year to take a few moments to do kind of a quick reflection of the activity. And that's just because it's a repetitive process. And every year we do it, we tweak something or change something. And, we think about what worked and what didn't. I remember the first year we had too many donuts. That was a big problem. And then I was calling donuts on everybody. So I actually put that down. Don't buy any more donuts. Like 3 years ago. So, let me you mind if I go through as part of the list real quick? I did send it out. So if you didn't have time to look at it, that's okay. But, anyway, you have to, reflection exercises I think are really helpful, especially with repetitive projects or with any team things. And part of it's just my background, because other than the years I worked at Nike, I worked for Japanese companies my entire career, and they're big believers, big in Kaizen. They call it Kaizen. And it doesn't matter if it's good. If it's good, then you celebrate it and repeat it, rinse and repeat. Or maybe if it's not so good, you still celebrate it because you learned something from it. You just identify and move on. And I saw that every day for most of my career. So I'm sorry.
What is that word again?
Kaizen, Kaizen.
Continuous improvement.
Yeah. So that's how you just say, okay, we did that. Okay, I'll never do that again. Or, what would we do differently? So I'm just gonna go through this kind of super quick, and much of these we refined over time, but I look back on the last 4 years of this, and it's just, I mean, some of, like I said, they're really silly, like the donut thing, but hey, I don't buy donuts anymore. The duration seems perfect, 2 hours. It's a lot of work, and you get hot and dirty, and people are generally ready to be done, but we still get a lot done. And the timing, time of day seems to be right before it gets too hot, but not too early. I'd say 20 volunteers is enough. We've had as low as 12. This time we had 24, which was interesting because it meant that I was doing a lot more coordinating I've ever done. I didn't scrub one headstone. That's the first year I've ever not had time to scrub one headstone. Anyway, we cleaned more than we planned, and we also cleaned more than last year. So we completed section 4, and then we started on section 6, and we got 5 of 14 rows done, which was much better progress than I thought we would, but still it was hard because some of those bigger headstones were bad. Anyway, but everybody that worked out there this time, I mean, everybody worked so hard, it just blew my mind. Let's see. We had a lot of great social media posts. So Tyler Frankie did one that people mentioned to me. There was great coverage in the Herald. Because I always try, when I have new people, I ask them how did they know about it. So it's still a combination of Facebook. Tyler Frankie did something. Tyler Nizer posted for us on Canby Business, and also put it on, what did he put it on Instagram? Yeah, so we've never had that before. So you never know. It's just helpful to reach out. I put it on Canby Facebook, Malala Facebook, and Aurora Facebook, and we got some from all 3, which is interesting. And some of the people from the Malala site said, why are you doing this? This is in Canby. And I said, because there are a lot of Malalians in there, or whatever you call them, Malalans. And sure enough, we did get people there who have ancestors. And somebody asked me, I said, I know there's at least one specific city founder of Malala that's buried there. And somebody said, who's that? And then I had to go look it up. I couldn't remember, but there is. Now I can't remember the gentleman's name. But anyway, there's a lot of Malala and Aurora history in that cemetery. Let's see. I think we continue to mark the sections, and that seems to work really well. It doesn't have to be fancy, it's just stuff out of my barn with the cardboard on it, but it worked fine. And then this year we flagged some specific markers with this. Well, did Jack do that, or did Jack, your son Jack did that? And so for specific markers that needed unique attention, Rachel's son marked those with an irrigation flag, and so we could send people clean that one and clean that one and clean that one. That worked out great, I thought. So thank you for that. Thank you, Jamie. Oh yeah, we were on the radio for the first time. I forgot to mention that. Actually, it was Ron. They called me Friday, the radio, out of the blue. I said, how did you get my number? And they said, Tyler Frankie gave it to him. What?
Good for you.
Okay, that's fine. And they called me and said, can we interview right now? Anyway, so, and they did, and anyway, KXL radio, but you heard it on the radio, remember yeah. So that was a first. Anyway, everybody pitched in this year. We just had, everybody worked really, really hard. So let's see, 10 new volunteers, which is the most ever that we've had new. 4 return volunteers besides all of us. So there were some of the normal folks like Paul, the Yelva Slackers, Brenda and I can't think of his name. You said it, Paul. Paul, yeah, Paul and Brenda, Yelva Slacker. They come every year. Some other folks who've come before, so that was good. And then after the project, I always try to put some posts with pictures that everybody's given me. So, and this sounds silly, but it got a lot of exposure. So on Canby now, 90 people liked it. On Malala, 129 people liked it, and on Aurora, 64 people liked it. So that's just about exposure of who we are and what we do. You know, a little bit of self-promoting, I guess, but shameless. Anyway, we'll do it anyway. So opportunities, let's see, these are just my things I came up with. I said we should always spray 100 markers at the beginning, and I really underestimated that because I didn't think we would get through that many. And you sprayed what I asked you to spray, which was great, but I ended up spraying more.
Yeah.
And I think it's better just to overdo it at the beginning, so that was.
Yeah, see, if you're not scrubbing them, they've been sprayed.
Yeah, so that's, to me, I'll put that in next time, is definitely spray more at the beginning than you think. I'm always worried about you know, wasting the spray, but that's kind of not smart. Oh, even without scrubbing, oh, okay, that's good to know. Yeah, oh, okay, good. Let's see, continue marking and assigning the rows, so I think we talked about that last time, we started that because of COVID. But it keeps everybody kind of focused on which rows they're on. So we have 5 more sections to go. So, and the numbers are big, really big. So we've done 559, there's 1,700, so there's like 1,200 left. I know. I've walked around and looked at some of them, and some of the future sections, if you will, are not as bad. So I have to think there'll be years that more could be cleaned than we've been doing. We've been doing the oldest, hardest ones, it seems. I'm still trying to figure out a way to reach out to the scouts or some other groups. So if anybody has any thoughts, that's always on my list to try to do better to get a more diverse base of volunteers, or a special project or something. I mean, that's fine too. If anybody, you know, wants to do something on you know, a date other than our normal date, that would work fine.
Can you use people under 18?
Yeah, no, we can.
I don't know, did this high school reinstate its service requirements?
I didn't get that, so that's a good
We
question.
used to have like 20 hours or something, Carol.
I'll let you guys know tomorrow.
Thank you.
To graduate.
Yeah, they stopped that because of COVID, but that's also one reason that we don't have a student liaison on this board like we used to have, because they don't have that requirement.
How many Boy Scouts?
I don't know how many scout troops there are in Canby. Anybody know? No. Yeah, I mean, and these are groups that are always so busy anyway. 4-H, all these folks, they always have so many other things going on. So yeah, probably.
Well, I have to find a spot. I have to look.
Okay, thank you. And I learned for myself this next year, make sure that we have a specific person assigned to spraying, set up, training, and put away. So I didn't do that this time, but I didn't have, you know, we all pitched in and did everything we needed to do. So thank you for that. It was like I was doing anything all on my own. I wasn't, and never have. So it's good stuff. Anybody else, anything for the Karina? Yeah.
I was reading through like some of the group ideas. I don't think this is one that we were still looking at doing, but just in case the stone running was like an art idea that was.
Oh, right.
It's something that's actually pretty like controversial, I would say.
Oh, it is? I didn't know that.
Because eventually it'll.
Oh. So we should not encourage any kind of art class rubbing. Okay, all right. That's
But
good.
if you would also like, there's a group called Cemetery Conservators for United Standards. And they're on Facebook, and I've been in touch with them a few times.
Ah,
But they kind of a pretty good basis on their mission is to try and do as many cemeteries in the United States to be on the same page as possible.
Oh,
Just sorry, like what their approach is to being.
excellent.
So they have some good like basic outlines, and then offering a class. In the future where kind of like, you know, the volunteer day, but maybe if there's people a little more detail oriented, it could be separate day from like the big one here.
That's a good idea. You know, I heard from several people that two people specifically were there because they found through Ancestry some old family cemeteries that they wanted to do some work in. And so they were there to learn. I mean, to help, obviously, and they both the individuals did, but they were really there to learn how to do it. And then I had somebody contact me about grants. And specifically, would a grant be funded for a church cemetery? Absolutely, yes. So they don't discriminate. The state doesn't. If it's historic, it's historic. So I think you're talking about a class to help people learn how to take care. That's a good idea. I like that idea. Okay. Especially you think of ancestry, people are finding burial sites that are meaningful to them that they probably have never known even existed. And the one gentleman was talking to me at the event said it was in Millersburg or something, and he said he went down there and it was just awful. You know, some of these just aren't cared for, and then they're vandalized and it makes you feel bad. I remember, I'm just gonna tell you a quick story. Years ago, we were trying to find my grandfather's grave in Tennessee. And he died during the Depression. They didn't even know what he died from, you know. And the cemetery, we couldn't find it. It was out in the middle of nowhere. So we went to the fire department and said, can you tell us where this, you know, this little corner cemetery is? And they said, well, you're gonna have to follow us out there. So they got the fire truck out and drove and escorted us to this field where there was a little cemetery and you couldn't even tell there was a cemetery. My aunts cried. Oh my gosh, it was so awful. It was so sad. So we spent the next few days cleaning it. But I can imagine now as people find their ancestors, they have this similar situation. Like, you know, there are these little things everywhere. So
Ancestry.com, I've started poking around there, and they're affiliated with another company that has pictures of gravestones.
find a grave. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they have obituaries often, and yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Find a grave's really interesting.
One reason I use that is kind of a cheaty cheat, but when I have a picture of something that's you all have cleaned, often if I go on Ancestry or on Find a Grave, it's there and it's black.
Oh,
So I can do a before and after kind of, because the pictures on Find a Grave are older.
that's nice of you.
Huh?
That is so nice of you.
Well, no, I just want to show off everybody's work. I mean, the one that your picture was by, I sent that to you, that you and your family, your picture.
yeah.
And that one looked beautiful, and then I found the older picture on Find a Grave. It was jet black, you couldn't read it, and big, big.
Enter stuff on Find a Grave?
Anybody can, yes.
It's public
Okay,
crowdsourcing.
because my relatives are convinced that
It's nice.
my husband's like great grandparents are buried at Zion Memorial. Like, no, they're not, they're buried in Zion Mennonites. So I wanna go in here. And
Oh, yeah,
love
it's
them because
super
they're
easy.
not-
Yeah, you don't have to be a member or anything.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. And yeah, so they were sold, they were started by an individual in Utah, this site. And it got so big, he sold it to Ancestry, and so far, it's free, so.
That's cool.
You know, their business model might not be to keep it free forever, but I would, you know, and who knows, but it's a fabulous site. Yeah, it's great.
There's something we should find on that too.
I'm signed up to it so that if people want a picture of a grave, I get an email from Find a Grave and I'll go out and take a picture. I mean,
It's even nicer.
it's like going to the park, you
Your
know?
niceness doesn't.
With this, family, but I couldn't find my grandfather's family because there's too much snow on the ground.
Oh. That's nice. And it was funny, it came up at the Rotary too, because we were showing a little bit of what we do with the cemeteries and Doc Harms, anybody, that's a common name, everybody knows Doc Harms. He came up to me afterward and said, I need help with our family cemetery. And I said, okay, okay. And he said, actually, it's not near my house, it's further south. I said, and I told him the road I live on, he goes, you're right next to the cemetery. I said, yeah, I am right, the Gribble Family Cemetery. So it's a family cemetery, but I told him, I said, somebody was just out working on it the other day, because I walk by it all the time. But they need headstone cleaning, and the family takes care of the grounds, but Kelly Harms used to be on this group. She was a very active member of this group. So I told Doc Harms, I said, well, just tell Kelly to call us. And he goes, does she know about this? I'm like, she was part of this. So anyway, who knows? This stuff comes out of the woodwork, but that's really funny. Anyway, everybody that hears about it appreciate it. It's just kind of such a good thing. So thank you again for a super successful event and for all the hard work everybody did. And Mike Nagano and the grounds crew there, they're fabulous, fabulous to work with. They do things I don't even ask them to do. So like he asked, I think it was last year, he goes, anything that wasn't the best? I said, well, the buckets weren't the best. So did you see all the nice new shiny buckets? I didn't ask him to buy new buckets, but he bought us all new buckets. Little things. Okay, that's it about that then. I have one more thing. It's kind of a favor to ask, or maybe to get a volunteer for something. So I'm headed south Friday and I'll be back mid-March. So the Zoom thing, seems to be working okay. However, we've been having some continued technical issues with our meetings. Like the last one we had, remember we had the consultant kind of twiddling his thumbs for a half an hour.
Yeah.
So they're working on it, but it's still problematic. Pretty much every meeting I'm in, we have a problem. And so there's the heightened discussions about it. Let's just say that. But I'm a 35-year IT person and I have to kind of sit on my hands and just not. Judy, don't get involved. So anyway, I know it's being worked on, but my concern is if we have a meeting when I'm not here and I can't speak, well, I can't speak, you can't hear me, then I would like somebody else just to take the agenda and lead the meeting, if that happens, as a backup plan, especially if we have a guest. I wouldn't want to just cancel the meeting if we've got Carol here or somebody else like that. So would anybody, as a backup plan, be okay to do that if we can't get the technology to work? Anybody? And I know, like I said, I know they're working on it, and it's a challenge with the people that come in on Zoom. It's mostly where we have the problem.
Yeah, we'll figure that out. We can put you on speaker.
Well, I was gonna say, maybe if there was an issue, like, with Tyler would have his cell phone, we could call in, which is
We
not
used to do
ideal,
that. We
but
used to do that.
yeah. Super not ideal.
Yeah,
I mean,
actually,
we
it
got
worked
that
for
thing,
us. We
old
did it
thing
for a
over
long
there that
time.
works, right?
Yeah.
Isn't
Yes,
that
yes, it's not plugged in right now, but we could, yes.
No, that's a
And
good idea.
yeah, the system in here is supposed to be being upgraded.
Well, we've had problems upstairs too, so it's.
Yeah, yeah.
My cell phone won't operate with Zoom anymore.
Oh,
Like I've noticed, like it's using it out. A lot of people have Chromebooks.
Let me make a note about
Did you
that.
say Windows?
Because
Chromebook. Is the one that they're using.
Hmm.
So unless you have a new, like a brand new one, that the new optics can download onto. Which I don't. Work.
Dr. Parker, did you have something you were gonna?
Well, yes, the city council has told the city administrator that we'll put as many zeros on the check as necessary to get this thing fixed. Because we are never not going to be needing this, and so if it, even though we just built this a couple of years ago, if we need to tear it all out and put new stuff in, let's do it, because we need to get away from this. What broke my heart was 2 weeks ago at the city council meeting, where our assistant city recorder was running a meeting, and there was a change up in terms of what presentation was going to come next. And something wasn't working and the audio wasn't going through. And I just ate because I've been there, everybody looking at it. And she moved it through, and I said, let's get a turnkey system.
Yeah.
Forget how much it costs. This is something we'll use forever. So I think the message is upstairs.
Yeah.
Now they're just trying, and being an IT person, you always know is something better gonna come out tomorrow, or do we go with what we got?
Exactly. Yeah, I was commiserating with Gordon. He's the guy that the CTV5 guy that's always here and running the everything, especially in the city council and the planning commission meetings, because I said, I feel your pain and I can see what's going on and it's not your fault. But there's a bit of folklore. Somebody said to me, I can't remember which meeting it was, well, this is a federal requirement. that you have, you know, meetings that allow virtual attendance, and I said, yes, but that's a cell phone. That would meet the federal requirement, a speakerphone meets a federal requirement, so it's not a good old fancy, maybe for the city council, but I'm not sure, I think that fanciness needs to happen for everybody, but if it can get fixed, then that's great, and so anyway, so I don't mean to belabor that, just to ask, thank you very much, so we have a technical thing. Yep, I'm back mid-March.
When the weather gets better.
Yeah, when my husband feels like it's decent enough to come home, that's what we can.
When he's bored,
Oh, yeah.
Let's not go there.
The agenda.
Jamie.
What about the agenda?
Pardon?
Oh, it'll all be the same, it'll just be all, I'll be on Zoom.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'll have to look it up. I'm not sure. off the top of my head. I'm guessing, I think it's 6 o'clock.
All right, anything else for the good of the order?
You, oh,
I was gonna say one thing. There's gonna be a car show over there. The Oregon Trail Fish Pipers are bringing their strawberry shortcake group.
When?
It starts at 4:30 and from 4:30 to 7 o'clock is the event.
Is that on Thursday?
We did this, last month. This is probably the last car show they're gonna have outdoors, until next year.
So it's this Thursday?
This Thursday,
So
You
Public
bet.
Works has been doing a car show all summer with first Thursday night market, and so yeah, that's.
come on down, one last blast for summer.
Awesome. Thank you. Sounds great.
Yep.
everybody loves the fish fry.
Yeah, we hope so.
Tradition.
We hope
It's a
so.
heritage tradition, isn't it?
And I don't have the details yet, but at one time we were looking at a show at the adult center in November, but now we're gonna go to our usual spot at the Fine Arts Center in March. I think March 18th. And we're actually gonna do what we were going to do on the 14th of March 2020.
Oh.
Yeah.
Days of future past. you know.
So, yeah, that would be a good thing.
Centennial.
These are future things.
This is what we're going to do.
Yes. This is what we're gonna do. In fact, we're contacting all the.
High school.
And we're contacting all the performers that were scheduled for that day. So far, we got 2 or 3.
Good, awesome.
We'll see how it works.
Okay, everyone.
You bet.
Thank you again. Thank you for being such a dedicated group. Appreciate everybody's.
Look at the time, Madam Chair.
You're awesome.
Thank you.